Hi, everybody. We are back, and you are in for a treat. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce my friend, Tanya Kunze. She is joining us from South Africa. Welcome, Tanya. Hello?
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be with you here, Gerhard. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak.
So take it away. Let's hear about the power of positivity. And I think you're going to enlighten us and give us an answer to the question, are you conscious or are you programmed unconsciously?
Wonderful. Here we go. So we're talking about cognitive neuroscience. And I think that that could possibly be sales' best kept secret. So we're looking at the power of positivity, which is underpinning those dynamics. Now, if we look at cognitive neuroscience, we need a better understanding of what that is. But before we go into that, I want to introduce myself to you. I have 3 decades experience in sales, marketing, strategy, and leadership on a global platform. So not only do I bring all the experience in sales and business development and marketing and leadership and running organizations, but I also back it up with my studies. Achievements, I've written 3 books. My book, The Power of Positivity, which is all about the financial benefits actually to underpin all the aspects of positivity. I'm also a LinkedIn Goodwill Ambassador and a keynote speaker and a Bessemer Judge in London, the British Excellence in Sales Management Awards. And I've spoken all over the world of these dynamics. And incidentally, I've been bringing the science, the psychology, and the maths to sales for many, many decades. And I'm hazarding right back to sort of 1991 when we started the dynamic. So if we look at my qualifications, I've backed up my sort of street cred, as it were, with a business coaching qualification and a neuroscience qualification and a facilitation qualification. And there's something else really important that I'd like to share with you, in that I was an anchor on CNBC Africa. And the show that I created and conceptualized was called Healthy Business. And it was all about the financial benefit of a business that leaned into all the soft skills you've spoken about so far. It leaned into EQ, it leaned into profiling, it leaned into the sports field versus the boardroom, and it leaned into all of these aspects on how critical it is to have a healthy business mind, body, and energy in order to financially and sustainably enhance the bottom line. So we really need to consider that as something we need to pay attention to. But I did that back in 1997 was when I did my first wellness programs in corporate. We were rolling out these dynamics of meditation, exercise, psychology, back therapy, making sure the ergonomics were correct in organizations. Way back in 1997 here in South Africa, we launched the first wellness within corporate. So we've been doing this for so many years here. And I've personally installed about 27 wellness centers within listed companies where we brought in all these dynamics, and the financial bottom line goes up. It's proven. So I personally have proven this dynamic. So it's really important to understand all of those things. So the question we ask ourselves is, what is cognitive neuroscience? And the question is basically the cognitive side is something we're quite well aware of. It's the thought, it's the experience, and it's our representational systems. It's our senses, okay? So we need to understand that those senses are what we're looking at. Then we have to look at the neural connections in the brain involved in the mental processes. So that's another aspect where we bring those 2 in. So we've got what are we thinking? And then we've got the processes that work on representing and transitioning and transforming. So we need to understand all of those dynamics that come through. So it's knowledge acquisition on the one hand, and it's also talking about those dynamics. So the knowledge comes in. What do you do with it? You receive the information. So let's put it into a sales prospect. So the salesperson walks into a sales meeting. He receives information from the client. That information will go into a number of places in his brain. It'll go into the consciousness part of his brain, where he has attentional awareness, or he'll go into the unconscious part of his brain or the fear center, where he gets inattentional blindness. If it goes into the consciousness part of the brain, he's going to look for the buy signals. If it goes into the fear center of the brain, he's going to see why the person won't buy. So these are aspects that we really need to be very, very aware of. All right, so now cognitive neuroscience is a branch of your psychologies, and it's also a branch of neuroscience. So why do we want to know this, and why is this important in sales, we are asking? What you are thinking, how you are feeling about it, and the hormones that your body releases lean definitively into your ability to operate in any sphere of business, but let's lean heavily into the sales sphere. If you have a stressed, fear-based sales team who are worried about achieving targets and are sending out debilitating hormones into their body, they are not going to be selling optimally. So yes, we need reward and we need converse. We need maybe a bit of stick, as they call it. But we need to be aware of the balance of that, because people need consequence, I get it, but they definitely need a lot more reward, because we want to keep them in the conscious part of the brain. And when we speak about neuroscience, I interviewed somebody on my podcast, which is, he is a radiologist, Dr. Shane Dorfman, and he was telling me how you develop new neural circuitry and networks in your brain when you meditate. So our whole focus as a society, but definitively in people who are in a stressed environment like sales, we need to do everything we can in our power to increase the neural networks in the conscious part of our brain, and to limit the neural network and neural activity in the fear-based center of our brain. So when I ask, are you conscious or are you programmed? I lean into this quite interesting thing. So we've spoken about mindfulness, and people are well aware of mindfulness. And at an event recently, I was a panel expert, and I said, when it comes to the recruitment process, we need to consider somebody's humanness. And the panel laughed, and I smiled, because what it's about is, if you do not understand a person at their worst, when they're the most stressed, and how they're going to function and operate, how on earth are you going to sustain their activity over a long period of time? We need to understand the mindfulness and the humanness aspects of someone. But now we're looking at consciousness, which is something completely different. Consciousness is taking your programmed thinking mind, aligning it with what your gut feel is, your gut brain is saying, and meeting yourself halfway. It's an alignment of the mind, the consciousness of the mind, and your awareness, your intuition, and how you feel. And when you are in that alignment, that's when you're in a state of flow. The Taoists call it wu-wei. It's a state of flow. Trying not to try. Professor Edward Slingerland, excellent book. So these are the dynamics we need to be aware of. We want to be in a state of conscious flow where we're actually in this now moment, because the programmed mind didn't choose any of the things it was taught. It was taught all this information. It took it in without question. But the consciousness, when you're aligning the feeling mind with the thinking mind, that's where your answers all lie. So we need to be very aware of these dynamics. And I put it into quite a fun, explanatory methodology. So if we look at the screen in front of us, we've got somebody that's got headphones on, and they're looking at a screen. So they're the gamer, and they're playing a game. What is on that screen is the game of life. So no matter where you turn, if you turn left, if you turn right, and whatever you decide to do, what happens is code is written. The gamer, well, the person that's created the game has written code no matter which direction you go. So you have freedom of choice as to where to walk inside that game. Now, if we consider that you are the avatar, programmed to act by the gamer in a certain way, all right? So you get up in the morning and you run through your routines, and we used to go to the office and we used to think that there was certainty, and we were deluded that there was certainty, because there is no certainty. In fact, when you walked out your front door every morning, you had no certainty, but COVID brought it to your consciousness. You behaved in a specific way. But the question that I have for you is, who is your gamer? Do you truly have freedom of choice, or is society your gamer? Now, there's two options I'm going to put forward. It's extreme left and extreme right. There absolutely is a gray area in the middle, and you'll fluctuate between the two. So let's look at option A. Option A is the gamer, is your societal and cultural thinking, making pre-programmed decisions based on society's advancements, outcomes, and the way you need to be, which is setting you out of alignment, because you're only using this aspect of self, okay? And then option B is your conscious mind, which makes conscious and mindful decisions based on what you want, based on what your gut feeling wants, based on what your mind knows is right, meeting yourself halfway. Now, the only way you can achieve that is being fully in this now moment, being consciously aware and questioning everything. Question all the paradigms you were taught in the past. They are old programs. The programs that we are running today should have been deleted and obsolete so long ago. If we look at our systems, so let's look at Apple, for example. They run the iOS system. How often do you need to update your phone? Now think about that for a second. The redundant operating system no longer operates, but we're the same. We should delete the old operating system that we used to operate from, and we must install the new operating system and start moving with that. And the thing is that it's perpetual. One of the things we can guarantee is change. We need to own the fact that this change is incredibly real. So I want to lean into a little bit of primal versus reactive. Are you conscious or are you proactive? And we look at things like neurons, all right? Now, what we need to be aware of here is our neurons are incredibly important. People don't even know what their neurons are. We should have been taught definitively about neurons at school, but we were never taught in the scholastic system exactly who we were because it was empowering. And the schooling system back in the day was designed to create a workforce. It wasn't designed to empower individuals and entrepreneurs and freedom. It was designed to control, make you not color outside the lines, stand in a straight line, don't speak unless you're spoken to, sit quietly, listen to the teacher, take information in and regurgitate. And then you get these exciting brains like Einstein who go, no, thank you. I want to think differently. Here's the box. This is me thinking outside the box. And that's what we need to start doing. So your neurons are everything to you. They're your ability to perceive the world around you. And it helps you recognize where you are. It helps you to understand and remember. Now, if you are remembering when you made a mistake, when you did something wrong, when you didn't have a good sales month, you can get knocked off your pedestal. So let's say you're on an incredibly good sales run. You are absolutely on track. You are flowing. And somebody walks up to you and goes, but remember when you were flying like this the last time and something happened and you were too full of ego or whatever it was and boom, you fell. And that's enough to cascade all your neurons back into that fear center of the brain because it remembers. So we've got to be very careful what memories we're holding on to. We've got to be very careful what we're recognizing to be right, to be real. And people often in a state of stress go back to old habit rebound and they start doing the things that they used to do before. So we need to start looking at the word wonder, and we need to start wondering what the life could be like if we started acting differently. And we need to start behaving in a completely unique way, all right? We need to start understanding, is it perceived danger or is it real danger? Do we need to take action? And we need to understand all of these dynamics we'll be moving through. Now, if we look at the next dynamic, I'm going to ask you, do you think that we could possibly be human artificial intelligence? So could we be human artificial intelligence if we are unaware and if we are living in a programmed mind? Now, we didn't choose where we were born. We didn't choose the first language we spoke. We didn't choose our names. What on earth have we actually chosen? All this information has been programmed in. Are we mindful if we regurgitate the news, social media trends, conditioning, other people's perceptions of the world? If we just take information in and regurgitate it? Well, I've seen a lot of that happening. I've seen a lot of people read books, just rejig the words a little bit, and then spew out the same stuff, just slightly different positioning. Okay, and we need to be very aware of that, and we need to question. And I spend my life questioning everything. I must have been the most incredibly annoying child because I think I questioned everything. I think Why was my favorite word. But I then ask you this. If we are conscious and mindful, and we are questioning and awake, are we still human AI? And I would say a big resounding no. That's when human AI stops. And that's where you start becoming more of the conscious part of the brain. Now, I'm a self-professed nerd, and this really excited my nerd brain, what I'm going to share with you now. And this is my material that I came up with actually at a conference, and I want to share it with you. So let's just quickly look at the next slide. All right, let's go. AI, artificial intelligence. That is what AI looks like. So I didn't make that up. That's obviously an algorithm for AI. Information comes in, it goes through a funnel, and output happens, okay? And if AI doesn't work, you just switch it on and off again, and it usually works, right? Now, this is where my little nerd brain got so excited. What else has AI in it? Brain. How phenomenal is that? The neuron operates in exactly the same way as artificial intelligence operates. Inputs come in, it goes through your myelin sheath, and it comes out as an output. If you are AI, if you are unconscious, if you are not mindful, and if you are just functioning in a state of stress, you will not be anything different to artificial intelligence. Our differentiating factors as humans are we receive the information, it determines if it's going to be passed along that myelin sheath or not. There's your freedom of choice. And then you'll have your different outcome. So when the information comes in and it goes into the myelin sheath, if you are conscious and questioning, you can stop it there and go, no, I disagree with that. And it actually doesn't go any further. Or you can say, I'm going to send that to the conscious part of my brain. Or you can say, I'm going to send that to the fear part of my brain. Or you can just let it go through and have an output as designed, okay? Now, that is true freedom of choice. And we have the capability of not being human AI if we use it. So we can change our programming, but we've got to realize how programmed we really are, right? And we need to stop being part of the moaning masses 2020, because if that stimuli comes in, whatever it might be, let's say it's the word target, achieve target, and you send it to your fear center of your brain because you don't think you can do it, because you're part of the moaning masses 2020, you've bought into it, you've bought into that program that's running. What's going to happen is you are going to have inattentional blindness. It was explained in the first seminar. And what's going to happen is you're going to find all the reasons why it can't happen, and you're going to get stuck. Same question, same input. Targets goes to the consciousness part of the brain. Different hormones are going to be sent into the body, and so the person will be acting differently. So it's not what you think. It's where in your brain you think it. And that's in my book, The Power of Positivity. Are you thinking in your conscious part of the brain, which is enabling and sending out positive hormones, enabling attentional awareness and ocular receptivity? Or are you thinking in your fear-based center of the brain, which is sending out, for example, cortisol, which causes undereating, overeating, depression, lack of sleep, and all the knock-on effects of that? Who's going to win the game? The person who's learned to send the instruction to the conscious part of the brain, to the anterior cingulate, or to the neocortex. That's what we need to do. And we need to be so conscious. And the way through that is question everything. Learn to feel. A lot of us have been taught to stop feeling and just be reactive. So we need to stop, question, feel, think, align, consciousness. All right. So we want to own your now. That is what is critical. Own your now. Let's go to the next slide there. So I've been back to my gamer again, and I've gone into freedom of choice, proactive versus reactive. Things that look like hot coals are not a good idea to pick up. Now there's your neuron program, and it's probably right, okay? And we then get conditioned with a whole host of aspects of don't do that, you're going to get burned in whatever capacity that might be, right? Now, what if we change that a little bit? And what if we say this time you're enabled to pick up that hot coal because you've got oven gloves on. And what could those oven gloves be? It could be I've learned to think in the conscious part of my brain. I've learned a skill of, let's say, close ratios. Therefore, I'm no longer afraid of my target because my oven gloves are actually my close ratio. I can pick up those hot coals now because I know how. I've been taught. I've been empowered with knowledge. I've been empowered with emotion. I've been empowered with consciousness. So the dynamic changes definitively from one to the other. But if you're not questioning it, then you're still going to be living in that programmed paradigm, repeating the same thing over and over again. And like my darling Einstein said, expecting a different result, and you're not going to get it. How do you change that? Question. But you've got to start figuring out who you are. That's super, super important. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to look at what the 1% do. Now, when I talk about the 1%, I'm not only talking about billionaires. I'm talking about the 1% of society who are actually happy, who are deeply, truly thankful, and who are in a state of peace. That's the 1%. Incidentally, and there's no surprise, I'll explain it shortly, the 1% ends up with a tremendous amount of money, success, opportunities, fun, and living their best life, whatever they've decided that is. That the 1% could be the Buddhist monk who's meditating on a mountaintop because he's decided that that's his magic. And he's going to get that, right? Or the person that wants 5 yachts and 3 jets and whatever it might be, that's their happy place. They would tend to get that if they are in the space of the 1%, that wu-wei, that state of flow, that state of mind-body synchronicity. And that is what we've got to look at, which is just like the 1%. All right, so now we've got to look at the algorithms. So when I talk about the science, the maths, and the sales underpinning all of these dynamics, I've been working with the science, the mathematics, and the sales for, gosh, I think since 1990, because I did my theses on all of these things when I did my coaching. And I always used to use a system when I was selling because none of us were actually taught how to sell. So I like algorithms and I like finding algorithms. But they've been taken one step further when it comes to things like choice, reaction time, eye movement, and so on and so forth. So we need to learn to be conscious. We need to learn to be nimble. And we need to learn to be focused. And these are all dynamics that are incredibly, incredibly important. So if you can take these 3 things out, audience, conscious, we understand what that is. Nimble, so adapting to strategies, and focused on what is taking your company closer to your goals and not further away from your goals. Forget the old paradigms, uninstall the old program, reinstall the new program. There is a new normal. But there was a new normal years ago too. People were just so busy stuck in the hamster wheel of life. And COVID has brought to the fore for us that there is a new normal. And that happened long ago. We just need to be aware of it now. So these are dynamics that we need to look at. All right. So as I've said before, and I'm driving it home now, it's not only what you think, it's where in your brain you think it. So as a salesperson, if you have one of the 24 money blocks, you are going to battle to achieve target. Now, I take a lot of my people through the 24 money blocks and I help them over the hurdles. And most of those money blocks were taught to people when they were at school, when they were young, or their parents or their society. And sometimes even society is constantly like, sale, don't miss out, there's not enough. That's constant programming of lack thinking. All right. So when I see the word sale, I try to close my eyes and not see it because I always have more than enough in my psychology. Therefore, I don't need to run off to the sale. And that is how a salesperson needs to start thinking that it's always available to them. So if I say the word money and a salesperson thinks the word money in the conscious part of their brain, positive hormones. They think the word money in the negative part of their brain, debilitating, fear, blocking hormones. Same word, same thought. It's where you think it coupled with the emotional energy associated with the word from your neurological memories, enabling where in the brain it goes. And then your body, from a neuroscience perspective, sends out those hormones, which either enable or disable. So then my question would be, what are we selling now? Because we're not selling what we sold a month ago, we're not selling what we sold 4 years ago. We are selling EQ. We are selling soft skills. We are selling trust, stability, all of those soft skills that people are buying. That's what people are selling now. And in this time, do people still buy people? Because we've got this separation anxiety from society now. So the connection of people, yes, sure, we can connect online like we are right now, but to what degree? To what degree are we actually connecting? So we need to change all these paradigms. And just for your information, of the 48 different types of sales profiles, only one actually buy people, but I'll go into that now. Right, so now let's go to the next slide. What new skills do we need now? All the old training methodologies are redundant. We need to shift, change, and mold them into what skills we need now. We need to develop EQ now. We need to develop all of these dynamics. So we've moved from the information age, which was all about downloading information, teaching, scholarly stuff, all of that, into the conceptual age, which was more a right brain dynamic. So the left brain was more your information age dynamic. The right brain is more your conceptual age dynamic. And those are the things that we need to look at. All right. We're entering a new digital era of sales. That is incredibly important. We actually are enabled through profiling to stop guessing. Phil Hagen, who I work with in the UK, he's my partner in the UK, the most amazing, amazing processes to help you understand who your people are from a profiling perspective. He is literally a creative genius. He created a product that enables us to see which one of the 48 different types of people your people are. So I'm going to say this to you. There's been a lot about know your why, know your how, strategy. I'm saying today, know your who, because that is your starting point. If you do not go back to basics and know your who, your personal who, and the who of your staff, you are dead in the water, because you will never be able to scientifically and mathematically and psychologically get the most out of your team. So know your who is my buzzword and take out from this. And I'm going to start closing off slowly on this. There are 48 different types of salespeople. So Phil Hagen created the modality to assess which one of the salespeople are through his DISC. It's based on DISC profiling. And we've ascertained that there are 48 different types of salespeople. Therefore, there are 48 different types of closing techniques, 48 different types of opening, prospecting, fact finding, etc., etc. 48 different types of managing methodologies, and 48 different types of methodologies of working from home. You need to understand who your team is, and that's what I've spent the past 9 years doing. I have been working with organizations, helping them find out their who, and then building sales, enabling coaching, training, tools, interventions, etc., to enable those individuals to work. So I've got another, I believe, 5 or 6 minutes for the session. Gerhard, I'd like to know if there are any questions before, otherwise I can carry on. And I'd just like to see if there's anything.
Well, there is a question. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. How will the robots deal with the human senses in order to get sales in the future?
Okay, so that's an interesting one. So very much to my drawing that I had, all right? When I would meet you, a robot could potentially read your eye movement. It could potentially read your neuro-linguistic programming. It could potentially gauge temperature difference, etc., just like a lie detector test would. And a lie detector test has your 97% accuracy. But there is something about the human, which COVID's actually proven, is we are pack animals. And we actually need human interaction. So when people were sitting at home and not having human interaction, they started getting depressed. So I can say that the likelihood of a robot being able to sell 97% accuracy based on looking at your neurolinguistic outcomes, so let's say blood pressure and maybe pupil dilation or the movement of the eyes, etc., based on a series of questions, sure. But we need human interaction. And That people by people dynamic is the anomaly of the human race. The masks, not being able to see one another, has caused a tremendous amount of stress. It's caused a tremendous amount of depression. So the human aspect to actually interact and engage with people, this is why the soft skills in sales are starting to come through and be such a profound dynamic, because we need that. And the more we develop, learn, teach, and enable soft skills from scholarly perspectives, right from when the kids are at school, that's what we need to start developing in humans now to beat the robot. Any other questions?
No, there's just one comment that I find interesting. Is your mind full, or are you mindful?
All right, I like that. So there we go. So loving that. So the mindful would be the program. So you'd be living in a programmed mind, which is being fed with a whole tremendous amount of information. And then mindfulness essentially is when your mind is emptier, where you're choosing what to have. So I talk about the shopping mall and I talk about the coffee shop. I've got 4 minutes. I'm going to quickly try and share this. So if you imagine the biggest shopping mall you've ever been to in your life, that is your subconscious and your superconscious and all the information that lives there since birth. And you've created what I call the coffee shop, which I call the conscious mind, or maybe when you could call it mindful. And you, if you're conscious, awake, have chosen what you allow into that coffee shop, because you've got a right of admission reserved at the door. But if you haven't started questioning and you are just full of information in your head, anything can go in there and you will just regurgitate. So the human AI is the person that hasn't questioned the coffee shop information and allows anything in there. And the person that has got the consciousness and the mindfulness is the person who's got a right of admission reserved. It's quite an empty coffee shop. They've chosen what they want to allow in, and they've chosen what they don't. And that is critical for salespeople, because if you've got your ear to the ground and you're hearing negative news, which is everywhere, it's always going to be there, because the negativity has a great paradigm in your life for protection. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying that what happens is, as a species, to survive, we need it to be negative. So we've got neural networks in our amygdala in order to create a survival strategy for us as humans. Now we need to try and reduce that and build in our conscious part of our brain. And that's how we do it, by clearing the mind, state of calm, state of peace, marrying mind and body, energy, and understanding all of those dynamics. And then you are in a state of flow. And when you're in a state of flow, you sell. When you're in a state of flow, you lead well. And when you're in a state of flow, you make money, because you see the opportunities, because you're producing hormones which are enablers, not disablers. And that is the bottom line. Anything else, Gerhard, that you'd like to ask?
Well, I think you did a fantastic job, Tanya. The question I have is, how do we remind ourselves to be mindful?
All right, so there's one lovely little tip I'll leave with you, which is quite a fun tip. Choose a color. So let's say we choose red, because it's sales red, right? Every single time you see the color red, stop, like a stop sign. What am I thinking? And if you're catching a perpetual thought loop, is that thought taking me closer to my goal or taking me further away from my goal? And that's one of the many tips that I can leave with you, but I think it's the simplest and easiest one to leave.
I love it. Well, thank you for sharing this with us. That was very, very helpful. And thank you for spending your afternoon with us from South Africa. And I hope that we can replicate that live very, very soon. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Gerhard. Thank you for the opportunity. I love sharing it. Thank you.
All right, we're going to have a 10-second break, and then we welcome Chris Beal in a moment.